looks like the clouds are slowly creeping in, although it is sunny too, mixed with the clouds, so that's still nice. And what's going on today? I guess it was an official reveal for a new drone. It's meant more for drone deliveries. I believe this is the same one that they were going to use in Japan for all those drone delivery plans. So apparently it's this one here, the Wingcopter 198, and they basically just, again, unveiled it recently, officially. What do they have to say about this? It says the Wingcopter 198 introduces an era of new opportunities for delivery drones, pushing flight and delivery capabilities beyond conventional limits. This isn't your typical quadcopter or octocopter type of drone that we're used to seeing. It says the Wingcopter 198 delivers where it is needed and when it is needed. Building on the patented tilt rotor technology, the Wingcopter 198 surpasses previous performance and durability standards, making it an optimal all-weather delivery drone that can withstand strong winds and rain. And they have some basic, I guess, specs on what it can actually do. It says the payload's up to 6 kilograms, range up to 110 kilometers, with wind resistance 50 ms average, 20 ms gusts. I suppose with these type of designs, it should be more energy efficient when you're just cruising. And it says here, cruise speeds are 100 kilometers an hour. So in carrying cargo and packages, that would make it, again, more efficient. You know, it's kind of interesting reading this one too, where apparently it dealt with here in Canada, they're going to start regulating, I guess, platforms such as YouTube just because of some kind of change in the law. It says Ottawa's move to regulate video posts on YouTube and social media called, quote, assault on free speech. Critics say if Bill C-10 amendment is really meant to control the online posting of unlicensed music, TV, and movies, a copyright approach would be the better mechanism. So it's one of those too broad of a law situation where it affects everyone. The Liberal-dominated House of Commons Heritage Committee has cleared the way for the federal government to regulate video content on internet social media such as YouTube, the same way it regulates national broadcasting under a new amendment made to bill updating the Broadcasting Act. And apparently, based on this article, the criticism comes on the fact that this would technically mean anyone who uploads some type of media online will be, I guess, regulated to death in some ways. It says here, critics denounced the move to give the country's broadcast regulator the ability to oversee user-generated content and said it amounted to an attack on the free expression of Canadians, particularly in the light of Heritage Minister Stephen Guilbeault's recent plans to give Ottawa power to order takedowns of online content it deems objectionable. So that is true. That would be kind of actually scary in some ways. So if they think something isn't accurate or they don't like it, they can just say, oh, take that thing down, and they can actually mandate it based on a law. So is this true, or is this just one of those, I guess, slanted pieces? As I said, usually when you read the news, they're not really fully news reports, or usually it feels like editorials. It says when the Liberal government introduced C-10 user-generated content, such as an individual Canadian posting a YouTube video or a TikTok clip, was originally exempted, but that exclusion for user content was removed by committee's MPs on Friday. And I guess the rebuttal to that, it says here, quote, from the Camille Gagné-Renaud, said C-10 specifically targets professional series, films, and music, and said there are safeguards in place, including that individual Canadians wouldn't be considered broadcasters under the legislation. So which one is actually, I guess, the true viewpoint on how this law would affect everyone ultimately? Would this be as nonsensical as Transport Canada's, for example, regulations on drones, where people told them clearly it doesn't make sense, it's too broad, it makes it illegal for people to fly in their backyard no higher than, let's say, 10 feet, and their only response, as you guys saw, was theoretically yes. I mean, that's not good enough, in my opinion, if your laws are way too broad where it affects everyone in that sense. Because people shouldn't even have the ability to potentially abuse it in any way just because they don't like something, for example. And in terms of large broadcasters and things like YouTube, there was actually this really controversial, I guess, video or interview recently. Now, on the platform, it's been a long time to my understanding where a lot of people complain there's a huge bias where large media companies, news organizations, they have some kind of priority over, let's just say, the average individual publishing information or videos, so they will be pushed more. And the complaint is this whole platform, like the YouTube, started with just regular people. That's one of the reasons why people actually watch it, right? They don't want corporate propaganda or something like that, if that's what you want to call it. They want kind of like the real deal. So apparently in this interview, I guess it's kind of official. They actually just say flat out, for the most part, that's what they do actually. They try to give priority to larger news outlets and all that. And the reason for it is kind of controversial in a lot of people's minds, because they're saying since they are the authoritative one, they're not, for example, a regular average person where anyone in the basement or something like that could upload a video about a topic. So they're not as credible, I guess you could say. So that's really controversial, where they kind of acknowledge that's what they do actually. They push, I guess, the larger and bigger media companies.
Tell me how you think about the evolution of the algorithm right now, where it is right now. What are the key things you're prioritizing and trying to fix? And what are the things you're worried about?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I think we've come a long way in our algorithm. Ultimately, we want to give information and suggest videos to our users that we think they're going to enjoy and want to see and related are to their interests. But there's a lot of caveats to that too. So first of all, as I mentioned, when we deal with information, we want to make sure that the sources that we're recommending are authoritative: news, medical, science, etc. And we also have created a category of more borderline content, where sometimes we'll see people looking at content that is, or there'll be content that's lower quality and borderline. And so we want to be careful about not over recommending that. So that's a content that stays on the platform, but it's not something that we're going to recommend. And so our algorithms have definitely evolved in terms of handling all these different content types. I'd say the plus of that is that our users are able to see higher quality content. They're also able to, we're able to make sure that they're getting information from sources that are very reliable. But I would say the con of potentially some of these changes, because as you pointed out, every change has some downside, is it may be harder in some cases for channels maybe who are getting started or smaller to be able to be visible when there is a major event or when people are looking at something that is science or news related. But I would say that that's a trade-off that we've made, because we've realized that it's really, really important. So we learned this lesson the hard way. So when we had the Las Vegas shooting, unfortunately, there were a lot of people who were uploading content that was not factual, that was not correct. And it's much easier to just make up content and post it from your basement than it is to actually go to the site and to be able to report and have high quality journalistic reporting. And so that was just an example of what happens if you don't have that kind of ranking. So sure, we want to enable citizen journalism and other people to be able to report and other people to be able to share information and new channels. But when we're dealing with a sensitive topic, we have to have that information coming from authoritative sources so that the right and accurate information is viewed by our users first.
And that's not an easy trade-off. I mean, your name is YouTube. The whole principle is that anyone can have complete free speech and publish whatever they want, or that was the founding principle. I would imagine that this is a trade-off that did not come lightly.
When YouTube first started, it was much more entertainment. It was much more focused on creating interesting things that you saw, funny videos. Music has always been really big on YouTube. But if you look at that, breaking artists or discovering the new latest small musician is very different if you're looking for something like cancer information. You don't want to see someone who is just posting information for the first time when you're dealing with cancer. You want to see it from established medical organization. And so what we've done is really fine tune our algorithms to be able to make sure that we are still giving the new creators the ability to be found when it comes to music or humor or something funny, or so many different categories: beauty, crafts, learning, how to, right? All these different areas. But we're dealing with sensitive areas. We really need to take a different approach.
So in many ways, I guess you could say it's evolving to be just like more traditional media, I guess. It's like the new TV. So will that actually change everything else in terms of how people perceive the platform in general? Or at the same time, for people who just consume content, would that actually change their views at all as well? Kind of like with the previous story, I think it's way too broad in general, because you're making the assumption that, let's just say, that certain news source or whatever is completely unbiased or something like that, which I don't think is actually true. News media makes mistakes all the time, and at the same time, a lot of the news is generated actually just from regular average people. Let's just take a huge example like that George Floyd incident in the US. regular person publishing like a video and stuff like that, people saw what it was like. Can you imagine if they were, quote, suppressed or something like that because they weren't the big media? Or afterwards, the only way to get, I guess, exposure out of that is a big media needs to report on it. So they're gonna, I guess you could say, rank higher than the actual person who took the video and all that. Like, that doesn't make sense. I guess from that perspective, whether it's the government or a company in general, there's always some kind of, I guess, weird bias or generalization that just affects, I guess, the small person. That's the only common theme here. It affects the small individual. I think any bias in that way is really dangerous. I guess the stereotypical example would be, most people would agree, if you want some kind of medical advice, you talk to a doctor, correct? But there are, for example, snake oil salesman doctors. So what if there's this doctor where, let's just say, the platform determined they're the authoritative ones, so any medical stuff, 100% they're gonna be pushed first. And in reality, they're actually pushing pills and stuff that do nothing or possibly harms people, but people are buying it and all that, saying, whoa, it's a doctor though. And then you have this regular average individual lays out all the facts. Maybe they have, I don't know, undercover evidence and all that, where they're clearly showing this doctor's laughing at scamming people and all that. But then according to this platform, nope, this individual is not the authoritative, I guess, person when it comes to this subject matter. So they completely, I don't know, push them down and so forth. And this doctor's material is still the one going up. Like, that's dangerous in my opinion. There has to be the balance there where, no, I mean, that's the information. People should be able to have it, in my opinion, and make judgment out of that. All right, see you guys later.